and what we borrow as a nation. It is a reflection of the difficult trade-offs needed to balance fiscal sustainability while simultaneously addressing the developmental goals. It is unsurprising then that the increase to value-added tax proposed on March 12 created so much debate. There's clarity now that will remain at 15%. The decision reflects our commitment to listen to South Africans and to all the political parties represented in this House. Today's budget has taken these views into account. This is what the past 2 months have provided, valuable lessons that will inform how we manage the budget process moving forward. The reality, however, is that the decision to do away with the VAT increase without a viable alternative source of revenue significantly reduce our ability to fund additional government programs and projects to the extent we had deemed necessary. Nevertheless, this budget supports sustainable finances, the social wage, investment in economic growth. This is not an austerity budget. It's an expansionary budget. It increases non-interest expenditure by an average of 5.4% over 3 years. In real terms, this is a 0.8% growth. It is also a redistributed budget. It directs 61% of every rand of consolidated non-interest expenditure towards the social wage. This is money that will be spent to fund free basic services like electricity, water, education, healthcare, affordable houses, as well as social grants for those in need. This budget invests over 1 trillion in critical infrastructure to lift economic growth prospects and improve access to services. Madam Speaker, this is done without compromising the fiscal strategy of sustainable public finances. We have achieved this difficult balance by reducing additional spending over the medium term by 68 billion rand. Let me repeat because there's confusion. We are saying by reducing additional spending is not cutting budget. There's a difference between the two. There's a difference between the two. What we've been fighting over these 3 months has been by how much we should increase budget, not by how much we should be cutting the budget. So what is being reduced is additional spending. These reductions are primarily aimed at provisional allocation, not yet assigned to votes. Simply put, this means baseline allocations across all spheres of government remain largely unchanged. Instead, the size of the proposed increase to allocation is reduced in line with what we can afford. Our focus going forward is threefold. Our focus, as I've indicated, is threefold: balancing the budget through spending efficiencies, strengthening revenue allocation, and giving expression to the medium-term development plan. This undertaking is not insurmountable if we work together, stay focused, and persevere to chart a better course for our economy and our people. Turning to the economic outlook, Madam Speaker, much has changed since our last appearance in this House. The most troubling changes are the global economic developments, which have, in the short space of 2 months, already had a significant impact on the domestic economic outlook. The global economy is facing heightened trade tensions and elevated policy uncertainty with worrying economic consequences. The International Monetary Fund now projects global growth at 2.8% in 2025. This is 0.5% points lower than January estimates. Similarly, global trade is projected at 1.7% in 2025, which is also much lower than the January estimate. At the same time, inflation expectations are now above central bank targets in many advanced and emerging economies. And new trade barriers may raise inflation and prolong the cycle of higher interest rates. Turning to the domestic outlook, Madam Speaker, as a small open economy, South Africa is dependent on global trade and financial inflows. This makes us particularly exposed to the global economic developments that I've just outlined. As a result, we now estimate real GDP to grow at 1.4% in 2025. This is lower than the 1.9% we projected in March. Over the next 2 years, we project real GDP growth to rise moderately to 1.8% in 2028, 1.6% in 2026, and 1.8% in 2027. Looking further ahead, the risks to the outlook remain elevated. These include the worsening global outlook, weaker than expected growth in the fourth quarter of 2024, the persistence of logistics constraints, and higher borrowing costs. These developments are a vivid reminder that we must urgently turn the tide on our economic prospects and get our fiscal affairs in order. Faster, inclusive growth that creates jobs is the only path towards a more prosperous South Africa. Attaining this growth must be our national obsession. We have all a stake and a responsibility to work towards this goal. Honourable members, our strategy for faster growth and to shield our country from the worst impact of an increasing uncertain global environment remains anchored on 4 pillars, as we have said in the past. Maintaining macroeconomic stability, implementing structural reforms, improving state capability, and accelerating this budget reflects this strategy. First, maintaining macroeconomic stability, promote low and stable inflation, and lower interest rate will enhance the country's ability to withstand external shocks. In turn, this creates a conducive environment for investment, savings, and job creation. Honourable members, prudent fiscal policy is a key component of maintaining macroeconomic stability. The balanced fiscal strategy we are presenting today reflects this. It stabilizes the debt as a percentage of GDP, achieving a primary surplus, expanding infrastructure investment, and supports the social wage. In 2025-26, government debt is projected to stabilize at 77.4% of GDP. While this is 1 percentage point higher than projected in the March 12 budget, it is mainly due to lower nominal GDP. The main budget deficit decreased by 8 billion over the MTF, compared to prior estimates in March. This narrow deficit is enabled by the steady expanding primary surplus. By 27-28, the primary surplus will grow from an estimate of 0.8% of GDP in this financial year to 2.5% by 27-28. Madam Speaker, a growing primary surplus means that our revenue will continue to be larger than our non-interest expenditure over the next 3 years. This contributes to a lowering of gross borrowing requirements resulting in lower debt and in lower debt service cost over time. However, debt service costs remain high, amounting to more than 1.3 trillion over the next 3 years. Put differently, this means in the year 2025-26 alone, we are spending around 1.2 billion per day to service our debt. We must agree this is not acceptable. This is more than what we spend on frontline services such as health, the police, and basic education. We must maintain our efforts to reverse this trend and prevent the cost of debt from robbing us of the resources that we could otherwise be spent on pressing social needs or to invest in growth. The fiscal strategy is how we will drive down the debt to GDP ratio, slow the growth of the debt service cost, and rebuild our fiscal buffers. And in this way, shield ourselves from an increasingly uncertain and unpredictable external environment. To address this persistent fiscal imbalance in the medium to long term, we have published a discussion document on fiscal anchors. The consultation with a range of stakeholders and experts on this paper are ongoing. Madam Speaker, a bigger, faster growing economy and the larger fiscal resources that come with it are the key to build up the fiscal room we need to meet more of our developmental goals. The second pillar of the economic growth strategy is our continued commitment to implement growth-enhancing structural reforms. Through the first phase of Operation Vulindlela, bold and far-reaching reforms were implemented in the next work sectors and the visa regime. As a result, numerous economic bottlenecks have eased, new investment unlocked, and the growing potential of the economy enabled. Yet the economy still faces constraints. During the launch of the second phase of Operation Vulindlela 2 weeks ago, the President amply pointed out that, and I quote, "Our economy needs to grow much faster to create jobs that we need and to achieve prosperity for all," close quote. The second phase will therefore focus on the following areas: seeing through the existing reforms in energy, water, logistics, and in the visa regime, improving the performance of local government. This includes professionalizing utilities, appointing suitably qualified people to serve in senior positions, and reviewing the local government fiscal framework, harnessing digital transformation in order to drive the adoption of digital technologies in government and build a digital public infrastructure for use by all South Africans. Addressing this apartheid legacy or spatial inequality, reforms will include changes to the housing policy and accelerate the release of public-owned land and buildings. This will also entail clearing the backlog of title deeds for affordable housing and a comprehensive regulatory review aimed at removing barriers to the development of low-cost housing. Tackling these structural concerns will ensure that impediments to faster growth are removed. Madam Speaker, the budget process this year has been contentious, mainly due to the tax proposal announced on March 12. I want to assure the public and this House that the aim of the March 12 budget was to balance the necessity of growing the economy with the equally urgent need to repair and rebuild public finances. This remains our goal, and as I've already said, the proposed increases in VAT rate in 25, 26, 27, 28 have been dropped. As a result, the expansion of the zero-rated basket, which was included to cushion poorer households from VAT rate increase, falls away. Madam Speaker, compared to March estimates, tax revenue projections have been revised down by 61.9 billion over the 3 years. This reflects the reversal of the VAT increase and the much weaker economic outlook. In this difficult environment, it remains vital that we still take actions to increase revenue to protect and bolster frontline services, while expanding infrastructure investment to drive economic activity. To this end, the budget proposes an inflation-linked increase to the general fuel levy. For the 2025-26 fiscal year, this will only new tax proposal that I'm announcing. This is the first fuel levy increase in 3 years. It means from the 4th of June this year, the general fuel levy will increase by 16 cents per litre and 15 cents per litre of diesel. Unfortunately, this tax measure alone will not close the fiscal gap over the medium term. The 2026 budget, therefore, need to propose new tax measures. I repeat, the 2026 budget will therefore need to propose new tax measures aimed at raising 20 billion rand. We have allocated an additional 7.5 billion over the medium term to increase the effectiveness of the South African revenue services in collecting more revenue. Part of this allocation will be used to increase collection from debts owed to the fiscals. SARS has indicated that this could raise between 20 billion and 15 billion and 50 billion in additional revenue per year. Another part of the additional allocation to SARS will be used to improve modernization. This will include targeting illicit trade in tobacco and other areas, which should boost revenue over the medium term. As SARS utilizes this investment to raise additional revenue, which I believe can be at least 35 billion, the 20 billion to close this current revenue gap will not have to be raised through taxes. Madam Speaker, let me call on every South African, be they individuals, small operators, business operators, large corporations, to honor their tax obligations and contribute to the building of a better and more equitable nation. To all taxpayers that continue to pay their taxes, thank you. We do not take this for granted. As a government, we know that we must earn the taxpayers' trust every day by spending public money with care and ensuring that every rand collected is spent on its intended purpose. We recognize the urgent need to do more to achieve this goal. We are not deaf to the public's concern about wasteful and inefficient expenditure. Our commitment to collect taxes must be matched by better efficiencies in how that money is spent. It must be matched by much stricter oversight that quickly identifies problems and provides timely solutions when things go wrong. Honorable Speaker, members of Parliament and fellow South Africans, before I continue, allow me a moment to share with you an open letter from a young medical student, Sarah Stein from the University of Cape Town. I've read and reread this letter since it was published on the 7th of May. The extract of the letter I want to share may be disturbing to some, but perhaps familiar to many of you, too many. The situation this young doctor describes of the state of public hospitals and the emotional toll of working day after day without the basic resources necessary to help people in need in the heartbreaking reality that this budget hopes to address. It is the reality that all of our efforts as political parties and as government must concern with, above all else. Part of this letter reads, and I quote, "Working in a public hospital with a way too few resources punches you in the gut every day. It is not just the trauma of seeing your patients die. It is having no gloves in a delivery room, no alcohol swabs to clean wounds, and knowing that nurses stop at the shop on the way to work to buy their own glove and masks because the clinic has run out of it. Where waiting time for a scan are months long and surgery delays needlessly let disease progress to the point of being inoperable. It is the limited beds in high care that mean doctors are regularly forced to decide whose life is worth saving more because there's only one space for one, close quote. Madam Speaker, it is for this reason that the budget maintains the expenditure trajectory presented in the March 12th budget. Addressing these persistent spending pressures to restore critical frontline services and invest in infrastructure is critical for improving access to basic services and lifting economic prosperity prospects. As a result, total allocated spending, excluding interest, will amount to 6.69 trillion over the medium term. There is also proposed additional spending of 180 billion rand over the medium term. This is lower than the 232 billion proposed during the March 12th budget. Let me repeat this point. What that sentence means is that on the 12th of March, we proposed to increase the budget by 232 billion. In the current budget, we're still increasing, but with a lesser amount, 180 billion rand. A breakdown of the sector allocation is as follows. The provisional education sector baseline over the 2025 MTF is 104 trillion, and 9.5 billion will be added over the medium term to keep the teachers in the classroom and hire more staff. And an additional 10 billion has been added to the baseline as announced during the March 12th budget to expand access to early education childhood, and is kept unchanged. This will increase early childhood development subsidy from 17 rand per child to 20 per day to 24 rand. The extra funding will also support increased access to early childhood development for 700,000 more children up to the age of 5 years. The provincial health budget is 845 billion over the medium term. This budget will be increased by 20.8 billion over the 3 years to employ 800 post-community service doctors and essential goods and services, and the reduction of accruals. This increase will also assist the sector in addressing personal budget pressures. For April 2025, the old age grant increases remains as well announced by 130 rand, split into 220 and 10. Where, as the original stated, the SRD grant, the COVID SRD grant, Day of Distress, will be extended by up to March 2026. We need to explain this. Does it mean it's not going to be extended beyond March 2026? The answer is no. The answer is no. Government is actively exploring various options to better integrate this grant with employment opportunities. This includes considering a job seekers allowance and other measures as part of the review of the active labor market program. Our goal is not only to provide immediate relief, it is also to create pathways to employment, empowering our citizens to build better futures for themselves and their families. We're also reconfiguring funding for the troop deployment to the Democratic Republic of Congo. This is in the light of the announcement of the South African phase withdrawal from the East African country. In this regard, the 5 billion we had proposed to allocate to the Department of Defense for its participation in the SADC mission in the DRC is reduced. But the allocation of 2025, that has been an increase from 180 billion rand to 3 billion. Let me just explain this a bit. Originally, we had 3 phases of increase for the Defense Force. In this financial year, it was going to be 1.8, and then up to the next financial year, 5 billion. What we have done, because now the Defense Force is coming back, the cost of bringing them back is higher in this financial year. What then are the implications is that we've moved an amount to this year, which makes the amount for this year becomes 3 billion to cater for the relocation cost. This will cover the immediate cost of the orderly and safe withdrawal of our troops and mission equipment. Madam Speaker, 1.4 billion is allocated to support the preparation for the upcoming local government elections. 885 million of the allocation is for the Independent Electoral Commission. 550 million for the South African Police Service and the South African National Defence for the maintenance of public order. This investment contributes to upholding the democratic processes and ensuring that every South African can exercise the right to vote in a safe and secure environment. This budget also retains the provisional allocation to early retirement, allocation for PRASA and the municipal trading entities reforms announced before, but at a slightly lower level than anticipated in the March 12th budget. Madam Speaker, the spending choices we're proposing today demonstrate the government's determination to bolster the state capability needed to deliver quality, reliable, and sustainable cost services. This is what Pillar 3 of the economic growth is about. Despite the additional allocations we've made here, there are other long-standing spending pressures that persist but cannot be funded within the current envelope. This is the nature of the policy trade-offs, prioritizing what we can do now and what we must postpone and spend on later when our resources allow. The spending pressures that may require funding later this year include, among others, the withdrawal of the Presidential Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief called PEFRA funding, particularly which was through the USAID. We've not made provision for the allocation for that now. The Department of Health has just given us the numbers a couple of days ago. Once the resources allow, we'll deal with this matter. The budget facility for infrastructure, the passenger rails agency service, PRASA, as rolling stock, accommodating population changes that impact on the provincial equitable share allocations. We have done a change in the equitable share which impact negatively on certain provinces, and we've agreed we must cushion the impact on those 3 provinces. Strengthening the capabilities of the Office of the Chief Justice and the Statistics South Africa. Political party funding is not catered for here. Additional, I'm not saying which is coming through Parliament, but additional political funding is not catered here, and provisional infrastructure for royal households. Also, what is not provided here are the cost of the national social dialogue. Madam Speaker, the government will consider government guarantee support for Transnet to enable the entity to refinance maturing debt and to enable the execution of its capital investment program. Honourable members, when an economy underperforms, as ours has over the last decade, it generates less tax revenue while requiring increased social spending, widening budget deficit, and accelerating debt accumulation. To be successful, our strategy of maintaining fiscal discipline while investing in growth demands that we prioritize high-impact expenditure. These are expenditures that deliver economic returns while eliminating inefficiencies, wastes, and leakages that too often plague the government spending. To tackle this, the National Treasury has undertaken expenditure reviews looking at more than 300 billion in government spending since 2013, with the aim of identifying duplication, waste, and inefficiencies. We found potential savings of about 37.5 billion over the time through improved oversight and political changes through these reviews, operational changes. Going forward, underperforming programs will be closed as the 2026 MTF budget process undergoes redesign. New reforms will target infrastructure planning and implementation across provinces and municipalities. A data-driven approach to detecting payroll irregularities will also replace the most costly method of using census. This initiative will cross-reference administrative data sets to identify ghost workers and other anomalies across government departments. Part of the goal of these initiatives is also to remove the regulatory burden on business. Madam Speaker, to be successful, not just technical solutions are required. Sustained political backing at the high level is needed to overcome departmental resistance and to protect whistleblowers who expose irregularities and wastage. I'm happy to say that this political backing has already come from the President, Cyril Ramaphosa, Deputy President Paul Mashatile, as well as my cabinet colleagues. Just to stop, I was impressed with the discussion in cabinet on the 14th of this month. With no exceptions, all my cabinet colleagues backed the measures that I'm talking about today. Thank you, colleagues, for that. The President has also undertaken to establish a committee between the President and Treasury to identify wasteful, inefficient, and underperforming programs. I call upon all ministers, MSCs, DGs, HODs, and every official responsible for public funds to embrace these efforts and play their part. Madam Speaker, the Division of National Raise Revenue will see 2.4 trillion of total non-interest spending allocated to provinces over the medium term. Municipalities will receive 552.7 billion over the same period. Of course, as long as you can find each other within that envelope, I don't have a problem. So the split addresses the fiscal realities faced by provinces and local governments. The allocations will fund increases in the cost of bulk water and electricity cost provided for the free to needy households, for free to needy households. In 25-26, 83% of the local government equitable share provides for a free basic service package of 610 per month to 11.2 poor households. Honourable members, this package of free municipal services continue to be a key tool for reducing poverty and inequality, raising living standards, and facilitating access to greater economic opportunities. The reality is that sustainable local government finances does not depend merely on enforcement mechanism, but on delivering genuine value to communities. Declining revenue collection rates are often a function of the quality of the services. Municipalities must recognize that quality service delivery is not just a constitutional obligation, but also a cornerstone of their financial viability. Tackling corruption remains a major priority of all arms of government. We're making progress in pushing back against action that is compromising our national interests. In addressing the scourge of corruption, the National Prosecuting Authority, through its asset forfeiture unit, adopted a broader and aggressive anti-corruption strategy that has yielded financial injection to the fiscals. In the past 5 years, the asset forfeiture unit has recovered over 5 billion paid into the victims of crime and criminal asset account, which is called CARA account. With regard to state capture-related cases, the asset forfeiture unit obtained freezing orders amounting to 14.2 billion, with 8 billion recovered and paid into the CARA account. We make these issues, colleagues, we've decided to point this information out because it's not out there to the public. There's a tendency that says nothing is being done. And I think we need to put this information into the public domain. Madam Speaker, quality infrastructure investment expands the productive capacity of the economy and responds to the diverse needs of the citizen. Infrastructure is also a rich source of jobs in construction, engineering, and related industries across a range of skill levels. It is for this reason that infrastructure is the fourth pillar of the growth strategy. And this budget demonstrates our resolve to change the composition of spending from consumption to investment. Allocation towards capital payments remain the fastest growing area of spending by economic classification. Public infrastructure spending over 3 years will exceed 1 trillion mark. The key question all of us should be thinking about: if we're to spend this amount efficiently and effectively, the impact on the economy would be massive. What we should be grappling about when you leave this room, all of us, grapple about when you leave this room, is not whether the economy is not creating growth and so on. It's the question, how do you make sure that this money is spent effectively and efficiently? That's the debate. This spending will focus on maintaining and repairing existing infrastructure, building new infrastructure, and acquiring equipment and machinery. It will also focus on 3 sectors: transport and logistics, energy, and water and sanitation. Of the 402 billion rand for transport and logistics, 93 billion is for the South African National Roads Agency to keep our 24,000-kilometer national road network in active maintenance and rehabilitation. 53 billion rand is for the maintenance and refurbishment of the provincial roads. These investments will remain our extensive road network, will maintain our extensive road network in good condition, allowing for easy access and movement of freight and people within the country and beyond. 66.3 billion is allocated to PASA, out of which 18.2 billion is for the rolling stock fleet and renewal program, and 12.3 billion is provisionally allocated for renewal of signaling system. I like the signaling system, if I may pause. I like that. I can see Honorable Hlego said, because what we're talking about is the speed with which trains in our communities and townships will change. Instead of waiting for 30 minutes or so for a train, you'll have a train probably in every 15 minutes. You know, the EFF colleagues remind me of the time when cell phones were introduced. I was still in COSATU, so Jayendra Knight would come to us, he was in the negotiations, would come to us and tell us about what the cell phone is going to do. If you are in the field, you're going to take this thing from your banklet in rural areas. I said, hey, how can this be possible? This is going to happen, is not a tale. The spending will sustain progress in rebuilding the infrastructure to provide affordable commuter rail services. This will enable PRASA increase passenger trips from 60 million in 24-25 to 186 million to the end of the MTF period. Access to safe, reliable, and affordable commuter service is critical for low-income earners who spend more than 50% of their income on transport. You know, before I go to the energy sector, I made an example last time on the 12th, except that you didn't accept what I was trying to say, but let me repeat it. I made a comparison last time and said, the World Bank has published something which compares the worker from South Africa, same amount of money, and said a South African worker will end with a disposable income less. And it says why? Because the cost of transport for the South African worker is higher than the Indonesian worker. That's the difference. So it's quite important that if you are of concern about poor people, these things should be of interest to you. The energy sector will invest 219 billion rand. I couldn't count their numbers until Minister Ramokgopa came. He's more expensive than I've had other ministers previous.
Order, honorable members. Let's allow minister to continue.
I'm old enough for him, so it's not a problem. So the 219 billion on strengthening the electricity supply network from generation to transmission and distribution. This includes investment in renewable energy projects which continue to contribute to stabilizing the power supply, resulting in reduced load shedding. Efforts to connect more renewable energy projects to the grid and expanding the transmission network through a multi-line transmission package remain on track. The water sanitation sector will spend 156.3 billion on expanding our water resources and service infrastructure, including dams, bulk infrastructure, servicemen, factories, and farms. Honourable members, maintenance is important to prolong the life of our infrastructure assets, in addition to ensuring that infrastructure services are reliable and not unnecessarily interrupted. This is the reason our budget emphasizes the aspect of, in addition to building new infrastructure, to further support infrastructure delivery and improve spending efficiencies, the National Treasury continue to implement reforms that will facilitate greater private sector participation in the public infrastructure. The new regulations from public-private partnership were gazetted earlier this year and will take effect next month. These will reduce the procedural complexity of undertaking PPPs, increasing the deal flow and allowing government to leverage its limited resources to fast-track infrastructure provision. The National Treasury has developed enabling guidelines and framework to support the new guide regulation. Specifically, the unsolicited proposals framework will create clear rules for managing proposals from the private sector, and the framework for fiscal commitments and contingent liabilities will strengthen fiscal risk governance. These regulations and frameworks will be published in the next few weeks. The recently established Private Sector Participation Unit of the Department of Transport and Transnet are making progress in engaging the market on PSP's project. The PSPs will resolve and improve some of the critical logistic bottlenecks. Win the elections first. In March, a request for information was issued for the ore, chrome, coal, and manganese lines. In April, a request for qualification was issued for the establishment of an independent rolling stock leasing company. Madam Speaker, the budget facility for infrastructure has been effective in supporting quality investment. It does so by reviewing proposals for feasibility, viability, and cost effectiveness. To date, 52.9 billion in additional funding has been unlocked through this process. To scale up this success, the BFI has been reconfigured to accept proposals quarterly rather than annually. In this regard, I'm pleased to confirm that processes of issuing our first infrastructure bonds in 2025-26 remains intact. We are exploring alternative financing instruments to allow pension funds, commercial banks, development banks, and international financial institutions to participate in financing our infrastructure plans. These reforms, Madam Speaker, are how to plan to leverage infrastructure investment to ease supply-side constraints to the economy and improve access to social service the people get. Honorable members, today is about delivering on the hope for a better life, a better future. It is an attempt to meet our shared goals of redistribution, redress, and structural transformation. This budget supports economic activity while raising future economic prospects, direct spending towards the social wage, and invest in state capability and critical infrastructure. All the while promoting fiscal sustainability so future generations are not burdened by the decisions we make today. We are not there yet, but I believe there is consensus in this House that around the country that this is the destination we need to strive for. The recent events have shown us that political debate is part of any vibrant democracy, and that this is not about differences on these goals, but about how they can be achieved. The debate and negotiations have deepened our understanding of policy trade-offs and institutional processes while giving citizens unprecedented visibility into our democracy's evolutions. Negotiation, debate, and compromise, as we have seen unfold over the last weeks, has been a necessary, if sometimes painful, investment in the productivity of future government reform in the new political environment. We have all gained a better, deeper appreciation of each other's policy positions and which trade-offs each of us is willing to contemplate. As parliamentarians, we have been forced to gain closer knowledge of the various institutional processes that govern the budget cycle and its passing into law. The public has had a front row seat to the growing pains of vibrant and committed democracy. This is a good thing. Our journey towards national prosperity belongs to every South African. Speaker, as I close, allow me to express my gratitude to the President, Deputy President, who are not with us today, and I forgot in my salutation to greet the acting president, who was unfortunately some weeks ago was also an acting president, but unfortunate for 3 hours. He was already telling us in those 3 hours, uba kungoko kuphethe mna ngoku. He was in my office this morning. He was suspicious. He was promising to do some reshuffle. So congratulations, Kwat. President and Deputy President, I have to thank them for their support. Our country with them is in safe hands. My appreciation also goes to my 2 deputy finance ministers and the National Treasury team, Director General Dr. Peterson. They have all helped to shape tremendous workload. As they say, many hands make a light work. Shut up and go.
Order.
Before that, thank you to the Commissioner of the South African Revenue Services, the Governor of the South African Reserve Bank, and also thanks to the Financial and Fiscal Commission for their support. Thank you. And my cabinet colleagues. And inkosikazi yasemachaweni, unkosikazi wam, ichoke iguqele kaChalbonge kwekwengu.
Thank you, Minister. Order, honorable members. The papers tabled by the Minister will be referred. Order. Order, honorable members. Order.
And what we borrow as a nation. It is a reflection of the difficult trade-offs and what we borrow as a nation. It is a reflection of the difficult trade-offs and what we borrow as a nation. It is a reflection of the difficult and what we borrow as a nation.